control.
Welcome to the NRF Gray May Meet the Researchers presentation. I'm Professor Stuart Pitson, NRF Chair of Brain Tumour Research, and I'll be your host for today's event. This is the first in a series of meeting the researchers here at the Centre for Cancer Biology and at SAHMRI. In the last decade, there's been an enormous increase in brain tumour research in South Australia. Only 10 years ago, there was hardly any research in brain tumour space in the state, and now we have at least 7 or 8 research groups actively working in this area, supported by neurosurgeons, giving that clinical support to the research. This has in fact led to a new collaborative called Brain Tumour Research SA, which aims to bring together those researchers with the clinicians to really foster that research and be able to help translate that into better patient outcomes. So why has there been this increase in brain tumour research in South Australia? I think there are 2 main reasons. One is engaged clinicians being able to access brain tumour material from consenting patients, which allows us to do high quality research with that material. And secondly, funding from the Neurosurgical Research Foundation. This has been absolutely critical to be able to provide preliminary data to be able to apply for and obtain major federal government funding. That has built the brain tumour research environment here enormously. Today, we're going to meet some of these researchers, both here at the Centre for Cancer Biology and also at SAHMRI.
See whether, because this is right, you're going to check it and say, oh, no, these 2 are not.
We're about to meet Associate Professor Lisa Ebert, Senior Research Scientist in the Translational Oncology Laboratory here at the Centre for Cancer Biology. She's an expert in cancer immunotherapies. Come with me. This is one of our research laboratories here at the Centre for Cancer Biology. This is the Translational Oncology Laboratory, and we just need to find Lisa. Hi Lisa.
Hi Stuart.
Hard at work again. So thanks for agreeing to meet with me. I'll just introduce you as an expert in cancer immunotherapies. Can you explain what immunotherapies are and why they offer such promise for brain tumour therapy?
Yeah, sure. So cancer immunotherapies really are a way of engaging a patient's own immune system to fight their cancer. So most people would realise that our immune systems protect us from infections, such as against bacteria and viruses. And cancer immunotherapy is really about turning that powerful system against the cancer by intervening in some active way with a new treatment. So this approach is showing really a lot of promise over the last decade or so, and we already have very effective therapies for certain types of cancers. The problem now for us is getting this approach to work for additional types of cancers, and our focus is brain cancer.
So can you tell us how your research intersects with this area?
Yeah, sure. So we are interested in developing a particular type of immunotherapy known as CAR T-cell therapy, and particularly developing this approach for the treatment of brain tumours. So CAR T-cells are a modified version of a patient's own T-cells. So I talked a little bit about T-cells before, and what we do in this therapy is actually genetically engineer those T-cells to give them a new molecule called the CAR, so this stands for chimeric antigen receptor. And once we've given them this new molecule, it enables them to specifically recognise cancer cells in the same way that they would normally recognise a virus or a bacteria. So to do this, we actually take some blood from the patient and genetically engineer the CAR T cells and then give them back to the patient into their bloodstream. So once the CAR T cells enter the bloodstream, they can move to the tumour and actually start recognising and killing those cancer cells in a very specific way. So this approach is already being used successfully for the treatment of certain types of leukemias. And our goal is to adapt this approach to get it to work also for brain tumours.
That's excellent. So why do you choose brain tumour research as your preferred area of research?
Really because we can see such a clear and urgent need for new treatments. I think patients and their families with brain tumours have seen a lot of advances in treatments for other types of cancers, but really they've been let down because there's been almost nothing in the way of new treatments for brain cancers such as glioblastoma and childhood DMG, and that's really what we want to change.
That's great. So what do you find most rewarding about the work that you do?
I think there's two things. So one is for me personally, I entered the cancer immunotherapy research space about nearly 20 years ago, at a time when a lot of people never believed it was ever going to work. It just seemed too far-fetched. And now to be at the point where we're starting to get really effective therapies and people are starting to accept immunotherapy as really a fourth pillar of cancer treatment, in addition to surgery, radiation and chemo, it's just really exciting to be part of that revolution. And secondly, I think for me, I find it really rewarding to have a very clear goal and pathway to achieving my and I guess an endpoint for my research. So I think CAR T cells are showing enormous promise, and we have a lot of experience in this field in our team, and so I think with the right support we can really develop a new therapy for brain tumour patients over the next few years.
That's great. Your research is really exciting, so thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last important question.
Yes.
We just saw a tribute match to Russell Ebert on the weekend. Is he a relation?
Well, the name Ebert comes from my husband, so no blood relation, but Russell Ebert, I believe, is second or third cousin to my husband.
Excellent. All right, thank you. So we're about to meet Dr. Melinda T. She's the co-head of the Brain Tumour Research Group within the Molecular Therapeutics Laboratory, my laboratory. She's an expert in discovery and evaluation of new drugs for brain tumour therapy. So come on through. Again, this is an active research laboratory where there are two main groups that are working in here, mine being one of them, and here's Melinda. Hi Mel.
Stuart.
Thanks for agreeing to talk with me. I just described you as an expert in the discovery of and evaluation of new drugs for brain tumour therapy. So why is it that most chemotherapies are ineffective at treating brain tumours?
So the brain is normally protected by what's known as the blood-brain barrier, and in normal situations that protects it from things like injury and insult. So what happens when a patient has a brain tumour is that this barrier isn't actually beneficial at all and actually stops chemotherapeutic drugs from actually crossing into the brain tumour where it can have its effect. So that's a major hurdle in the treatment of brain cancers.
So how is your research trying to solve this problem?
So we are using drugs that have been shown in the lab and in the clinic to be able to safely and temporarily open up this blood-brain barrier, which means that drugs that don't normally cross the blood-brain barrier can actually cross and enter the tumour where it's needed.
So, I guess a lot of the public would like to understand, the timeframes around translating successful findings in the lab to treatment of patients in the clinic.
So, a sort of point in our research that we're repurposing drugs that are normally used in the clinic for other diseases, and that means there's a shorter translation time. We also have these really advanced preclinical models that we've got in the laboratory. So we're able to combine the two to basically help translate these into clinical trials a little quicker, especially with the collaborations we have with some of the neurosurgeons and clinical oncologists within the state.
So we all know that the outcomes for brain tumour patients are devastatingly bad, and they haven't really changed in the last 30 to 40 years. So how do you as a researcher remain focused and motivated in this difficult research area?
So brain cancer kills more people under 40 than any other disease, and that just means that we are able to, through the Neurosurgical Research Foundation, meet a lot of the patients and their families. That keeps us focused and motivated to make sure that our research is actually meaningful in terms of outcomes for these patients as well as their families.
That's great. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking at here?
So what we've got here are patient brain cancer cells. These have been donated for research. We've just done some labelling of them in the laboratory to just show how different they look compared to normal cells that we're able to purchase in. This piece of equipment is called the EVOS. It was donated by Hannah and her family. Hannah unfortunately died of glioblastoma in 2019, and her family has provided this piece of equipment for us, which has really been able to accelerate our research.
All right, thanks Mel, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
There's two of them down there.
So we're about to meet Dr. Guillermo Gomez from the Centre for Cancer Biology. He runs a lab here that tries to understand brain tumour heterogeneity and how better to understand that for better therapies. So come on through. So this is one of our write-up spaces in the Centre for Cancer Biology, where all of the researchers write up their results and do their bench research. Hi, Guillermo.
Hello, Stuart.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me.
Okay, no problem. Glad to speak about what we do in the lab.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your research?
Okay, so I have a laboratory here at the Center for Cancer Biology that focuses on understanding the heterogeneity of brain tumors and why this heterogeneity causes a lot of problems when we try to find new, better cures.
Yeah, so I guess tumour heterogeneity means really that not all of the tumour is the same tissue, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you are right. So the tumor heterogeneity in the context of brain cancer occurs at different levels from patient to patient. That includes age, includes also the sex, gender, male and females, and also there are different tumor subtypes, right, that occurs in patients. So all these things build up in something that is complex, and we need better tools to be able to address that.
Excellent. So with a lot of effort around the world devoted to studying brain tumours, what do you think has impeded greater success in developing effective brain tumour treatments to now?
Yeah, so I think the main barrier is, as I said, one is heterogeneity, but also is how we study the heterogeneity in preclinical context, right, where we're trying to find new targets and also develop new drugs. So one of the bottlenecks has been the development of models, that better recapitulate that heterogeneity, but also the human tissue, not only the tumor cells, that are human tumor cells, but also the presence of the neighboring cells that constitute the tumor microenvironment.
So what do you think injecting more money into brain tumour research will do? Will it attract more people into the field? Will it enable more equipment or more physical resources?
Yeah, I think all those three things are needed to improve our capacity to develop therapies for brain cancer patients. So better equipment will enable us to accelerate our workflows to research, to be able to not only identify few targets, but many of them, and also be able to capture all the different patients that might occur and present different types of tumors at the same time. More infrastructure also means that we will be able to access to new data management capacity in terms of softwares, or for example the implementation of artificial intelligence to capture those features that normally are not captured by normal humans, that will enable us to identify key factors that we should be considering when addressing these different types of tumors. But also finally, another thing that is clearly required is to bring different expertise into the field. I think this problem of heterogeneity makes these tumors very challenging to study, and we need people that have different interdisciplinary background. For example, ranging from neuroscientists, computer engineers, cell biologists, even physicists, and so on.
Excellent. And you know, why did you choose brain tumour research as your area of expertise?
Yeah, I think there are two things, maybe three, right? One is obviously it's a terrible disease, so I feel that very touched for every person I know and then being diagnosed with brain cancer. I know, the survival rates are very low, and unfortunately there is nothing that has improved that survival in the last 3 decades. The other things that also motivated me to move into brain cancer research is that I was building tools to understand the fundamental biology of cells, and I think that knowledge I can bring to develop a new area of research within brain cancer. And that was the build-up of organoids and also artificial intelligence. And the other last motivation is that my entire career in research started in the brain. So basically I studied electrophysiology when I was in high school, participated in the lab, and understanding how the cell works in the brain was something that always motivated me to do research. And now I can bring all that together at this stage where I have my own lab, and that together with the collaboration that we have here in South Australia, in your lab, Stuart, also Michael Brown downstairs, and also collaboration with neurosurgeons like Santos Ponos and the South Australia Tumor Bank, make that possible so we can do the research that can impact patients.
Excellent. Well, thank you for speaking with us. I have one last question for you, though. Being a passionate Argentinian and a mad football fan, what do you got to say about Italy being knocked out of the World Cup?
It's a terrible loss, but we won. I think we will have other teams to entertain ourselves.
Thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye. Here at SAHMRI to interview Associate Professor Cedric Bardi from Flinders University. He's the Director of the Laboratory of Human Neurophysiology and Genetics here, and an expert in modelling human brain tissue in the laboratory for preclinical assays of neurological disorders. So we're here with Associate Professor Cedric Bardi of Flinders University. He's the Director of the Laboratory of Human Neurophysiology and Genetics here at SAHMRI, and an expert in modelling human brain tissue in the laboratory for preclinical assays of neurological disorders. So thanks for having me over here, Cedric. So you have a strong background in stem cell research. How does that intersect with and benefit brain tumour research?
Right. So we have a background not only in stem cell research but in neuroscience, I should say. And so we use stem cells to derive tissue, brain tissue from patients. And I think that's really important or useful for brain cancer research because in many ways it's very difficult to study the cancer cells in a human brain environment. And in that sense, we can apply what we know about the neurobiology of the human cells and try to see that interaction with cancer cells, drive some disease mechanisms of those.
So what's the most exciting brain tumour research you're doing at the moment?
Well, something I'm really excited about is, first of all, to be able to work with local patients and collect their tumor from local hospital. Through collaborators at the SAHMRI and neurosurgeons at the medical center, and then what's clear to me is that it's not so hard to find a drug that kills cancer cells, but one that kills the cancer cell efficiently without damaging the function of the healthy neurons. It's a little bit more difficult. And this is why I think our approach, combining the background in human neurobiology and specifically electrophysiology of the neurons, can really add something, but it might be quite unique to this more typical brain cancer research.
Yeah, sure. So what do you think are the most challenging aspects of your research?
I think you know, the most challenging part for us is probably working against time at so many levels. Unfortunately, the type of patients we trying to help here have very limited time. Once they're diagnosed, we have like 15 months on average, sometimes even less. So trying to find, being mindful of that, trying to really work as hard as possible, as quickly as possible to really improve things is challenging. Because sometimes biology has its own time constraints, that you can't move around, especially when you start working with human brain cells, and so on.
Sure, yeah. And I guess the contrast, what do you find the most rewarding about the work that you do?
There's many things that are rewarding. I love, the opportunity I have to do this job, and I think ultimately the reason we wake up in the morning, I think most researchers in medical research will be answering the same thing, is like trying to make a difference, trying to have a positive impact on people's life. But I'm not a clinician. I'm not going to be able to, cure someone, directly. But I like to think ourselves are, a little bit, behind the scene, if you want, trying to give the best tools, the weapons as possible to these clinicians to then treat these patients. But I'm fortunate to work in this very dynamic environment and do interact with the patients and get the feedback and learn from them and get extra motivation from them on a daily basis. So that's probably one of the most rewarding things, and I would say I love solving problems. So from this is a tough challenge, but I think I'm hopeful. I think there is solution down the line, and there's obviously a lot of very bright people working on it, and we hope to contribute to some extent.
Great. Your work certainly is at the cutting edge, so thank you very much for spending a bit of time with us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this small snapshot into the brain tumour research that's going on in South Australia.